me some ice. Skin me a peach and save the fuzz for my pillow. Poach me a prawn, talk to me nice. You got to wine me anytime. Yeah, I'm getting hungry. Peel me a grape.
Hello everyone. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here. I am Chef Laura Bonicelli of the Bonicelli Cooking Club and the Minneapolis Farmers Market Market Chef. And this is the Outdoor Cooking Masterclass. And we're doing this presentation in partnership with the Minneapolis Farmers Market and the Bonicelli Cooking Club. So if you are watching this live, you can go to bonicellicookingclub.com and immediately you'll see a pop-up. Fill out the form and we'll send you an email with a link to download a packet of all of the recipes and guides that I'm referring to tonight and more. That's about 10 recipes and the guides are spectacular. So if you're watching this at a later date, we may not have those particular recipes available if you fill out the form in the pop-up, but there will be free recipes because there are always free recipes if you go to bonicellicookingclub.com and fill out the form. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're starting to grow this and you can turn on notifications and you'll know when we're uploading or going live. And also like and share this live stream video and all of the other videos. And thank you, Minneapolis Farmers Market. We are featuring a few vendors from the market tonight with interviews that we actually did last summer. So we decided to focus on meats and vegetables in this stream and video. So now here's what we are covering. Number one, your grilling setup, very important. Number two, brines, marinades, rubs, sauces, and wood, specifically chips, how, when, where, and why to use them. Number three, how to grill the perfect steak and the doneness guide. And number four, perfectly grilled vegetables. So, starting with agenda number one, item number one, your grilling setup. Any task that you approach involving cooking in any form gets better or goes better if you have the right equipment. Outdoor cooking doesn't necessarily have to involve a complicated setup, but when you have the right equipment, when and where you need it is important. And let's run the video number one and we will watch it. And this is when I employ mise en place, which is a French term that means everything in its place. So we have a whole course on that in the cooking club. I take trays of my equipment outside with me, so I'm not running back and forth to the kitchen. So I have tongs and forks and brushes for sauces and marinades. I have my grill basket over here. I take a flat grate. I have a good instant read thermometer, which is right here. I have mitts and damp and dry microfiber towels and paper towels off the roll, so I don't have the roll rolling across my lawn. I get all of this ready ahead. By the way, I set something on top of this so it doesn't blow across the lawn too, but I also have kosher salt and I have freshly ground black pepper and canola oil for grates in the pans. So anything specific to a recipe like a sauce or a spice blend or a separate, I put on a separate tray. I also take one of these with me if I need it. This is a burner. It's inexpensive. It's a butane burner. I use these a lot in the cooking club, and club members know I love them. They heat very quickly, and if you're doing something like corn on the cob, it's perfect for that, and you can do it outside. And this guy is usually in my garage. It's a chimney to start charcoal in. Works really well, and then you don't have to use lighter fluid, which affects the taste of the food. Right now we have propane tanks attached to our grill. So I don't use that, but I keep it on hand because sometimes I run out of propane. So one last thing, when I take my proteins out to the grill, I always have an extra clean plate underneath, like this. So I put them on a clean plate when they're cooked because I don't want to put cooked meat on a plate with raw juices. And again, I don't want to run inside to get one. So let's talk about the grills. There are two main camps in grills, and that is gas and charcoal. Charcoal grills are generally less expensive, but not always. You can part with as much money as you want to in buying either one of them. Usually people are in one camp or the other. They're charcoal or they're gas grills, and they are really quite sure that the other camp is just wrong. I'm a charcoal person, but I do spend a lot of time looking at gas grills, so I may end up with one. So here's the breakdown between the two. Gas grills are convenient and they are clean, well, they're cleaner. You can buy them with separate heating elements within each grill, so you can control the heat in separate areas very easily. The temperature is set like an oven, and it stays where you put it. Charcoal grills are tougher. They produce a rich, smoky taste, though, but they do require some skill in dealing with the fire building, and they are messier. They also take more time because you have to wait for the fire to get up and ready, and it may need to be fed to maintain temperature, which means adding charcoal. Now for me, because the fire temperature is a moving target, and it always is, I sometimes do pre-cooking either in my oven or with a sous vide circulator, or even in my microwave. Then I'm basically finishing food off, imparting that grilled flavor. And that's helpful too, to do it that way, because I have one grill and it's only this big. So it allows me to spend time making my meal timed better. On both charcoal and gas, you can use smoke via wood chips or chunks. So the gas grill can get a smoky flavor with chips, and it is fire, of course, so it will char and brown food. There are a lot of different options when it comes to wood chips and chunks, and many places have very strong regional preferences, but generally speaking, there are 5 varieties of wood that are widely available, and that is hickory, mesquite, apple, cherry, and pecan. So when I use them, I always soak them first, which is traditional, and I usually just place them directly on the coals. If you are using a gas grill, you can wrap them in foil, put coals in it, or buy a wood chip container. They make those, and it's designed for wood in grilling. Because the wood is soaked in water, it doesn't flare up much. It does a little bit, but sometimes. But it smokes, which is exactly what you want. So I did want to touch briefly on the 2 types of grilling, because there are 2, which is direct and indirect. Controlling the temperature, especially with charcoal, is absolutely the biggest challenge in outdoor grilling. So using a direct or indirect technique, or a combination of the 2, gives you the flexibility to cook almost anything on the grill. So this applies to both types of grills. So direct heat means that foods are placed directly over a lively flame or a hotbed of coals, and that's where the heat is the hottest and the food cooks really quickly. This is perfect for searing and quick cooking things like a thin piece of meat or fish, or quick cooking vegetables like asparagus. Indirect grilling means that foods are placed on the grill close to but not on top of the heat source. The heat source is less intense, so foods take longer to cook. Foods such as ribs or longer cooking vegetables do not do well with indirect heat. So I find that using a combination, though, of direct and indirect, and you'll see that going forward here in what we're showing you, that's what I do a lot of. And Weber has a set of baskets that contain our coals. So I'm using direct grilling when I'm over the baskets, and indirect in the center of the grill when I'm not over the baskets. If I'm doing something like roasting a whole chicken, I think we have a picture of that, I'll put the whole chicken in the center of the grill with a pan underneath, and that's to catch the drips from the juices and fat that cooks off of the chicken. Great grilling, like all cooking, depends on 3 elements: great food, the right equipment, and technique. And I can't stress enough that vetting your food resources is so important. There's no way to mask inferior quality in food, and high quality food stands on its own. So let's take a look at a treasured vendor at the Minneapolis Farmers Market. This is Christina Traeger from Grilling Meats. I was talking to Christina specifically about lamb, but she has so much more on her farm that she sells at the market, including duck eggs. Okay, so that lamb was fantastic. So can you tell me a little bit about it?
The sheep are Katahdin, which is a hair sheep. They were developed in Maine, and the particular breed was developed for the meat flavor. So they took several different breeds and combined them to create the Katahdin breed. So that's the basics of the breed. They're pastured. We don't feed any grain to them unless we have to. If they get into period where it's stressful or something, we may feed them a little bit, but these sheep have had nothing but good hay all winter, and then they get grass all summer.
And how many of them do you have?
I run about 15 ewes, so not very many.
So what else is on your farm?
We raise grass-fed beef, we raise pigs, the mangalitsa, then we have the sheep, ducks, turkeys, Thanksgiving turkeys, and chicken, and guinea fowl. Really? Yes.
And how often are you here at the market?
I'm here every Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, you certainly are. Thank you. I hope that gave you some kebab and lamb inspiration. Do you know a person, usually someone that doesn't really cook or identify themselves as a cook, but their thing is grilling or barbecue? By matter of a general description, barbecuing is low and slow, grilling is hot and fast. It doesn't matter which they're into or both. The point is that person is obsessed, and nothing makes them happier than a new brine or sauce or rub recipe or a new type of wood chip. That brings us to agenda item number 2, brines, marinades, rubs, sauces, and wood. How, when, where, and why to use them. Now, flavoring food in grilling has lots of options, but let's start with brining and marinating because there's often confusion about this. What is the difference between the two, and when and where and why do you do them? So some people say that brining is for moisture and marinating is for flavor, which is true, but both actually do impact flavor and moisture. So to me, a brine has a base of water and a lot of salt, usually, or sugar sometimes. And from there you can start adding peppercorns or dried cloves, that type of thing. A marinade is usually more complex and is similar to a sauce, and sometimes it is a sauce. And that's where I involve fresh herbs, olive oil, mustard, yogurt, for example. But both brines and marinades break down the meat, fish, or poultry that you're using them on. So you need to control the time so you don't destroy your protein. I didn't include it in the packet, but in the cooking club we'll have a brining and marinade guide, so you can be mindful of how long is appropriate. And if you think of it, fish is going to be less and tougher meats are going to be more, of course. So we're going to be talking about a vegetable marinade guide. It's my after marinade guide in a few minutes, and that recipe, the guide, and that guide is in the packet. We're using a marinade afterwards, after we grill, because marinades don't really soak into raw vegetables, but they do soak into cooked ones. Dry rubs or spice blends, and I love these, and I have a million recipes for them. I gave you 2. I gave you a North Carolina rub that I put together for my niece's wedding, very proud of that, and a Portuguese spice blend. So I always make my own rubs and blends. It keeps my spice drawer active, which is important because it helps me use up all my spices before they lose their potency. And rubs and blends are great. You can rub them onto your meat or fish a few hours before you grill or sprinkle them on right before, and they're handy to just toss on vegetables if you need something to perk them up. So sauces, and I gave you 2 barbecue sauce recipes, and we'll talk about those in a bit. The great thing about barbecue sauces is that they can be added at the end of grilling, and they impart a wonderful finishing flavor, and you can serve more of the sauce on the side. One thing I've noticed about most producers, really of anything, vegetables, meat, poultry, most producers usually prefer the simplest preparations of their product because they love their product and they don't want the flavor masked. They want it to be in front and center and appreciated. So if you think of it like winemaking, where every single element matters for fruits and vegetables, the soil, the seeds, where and when they're planted, how they're watered and fertilized. For anything involving an animal, the mix of what they're fed, how they live, it all matters. This is an interview with Ricky from Tollefson's Family Pork.
What we do and have been doing for a long time is my dad has a very special diet to our pork. The diet is designed to change the fat to make it a little healthier, change it from a saturated to a polyunsaturated, which is very unique with pigs themselves. It's a very expensive diet, so we only sell it directly ourselves. So we get a lot of people asking why we're not in stores. You're not likely to expect that. But what you'll find is the flavor is fantastic as well due to that same diet. Now, we've been at the farmers market for, as I said, for about 40 years. We don't know for sure. Um, and it's been really cool getting to make the relationships with customers that we've been able to do.
So this is your whole family, right?
This is, we spread out in between the different farmers markets because we found as family members, we work more peacefully with distance in between. It's taken us a while to get there. What's really cool though is a lot of the people that work for us are customers who have been coming to us for a long time. Like Gary right there, he's been a customer for almost a decade. Rachel, her family's been buying from us since as long as we've been here, so the 30-some years.
So that sounds like love too.
Exactly. It's just the customers love us, we love the customers, and it's just such a beautiful thing down there.
So I'm going to be making some of your ribs.
Okay, the ribs, what we are doing different than most people is we cut the spare or the whole rack into strips. So it's actually more convenient for eating, but it's really convenient to take straight out of the freezer, throw in the crock pot on low for just 5 hours. Easy as can be, and they're delicious every time.
Let me tell you what I'm doing with them.
Okay.
Because it's a grilling event.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm going to brine them for a while,
Okay.
probably 3 or 4 hours in apple cider vinegar, and then we're going to finish them off. We'll start them in the oven. I'm thinking 4 hours, low heat.
That's what I was wondering, what temperature?
Yeah.
200?
Probably 225.
Yep.
Okay, 225, and they'll be wrapped in foil.
Okay.
A little pepper, that's
Yep.
all. So, and then I'm going to finish them off on the grill
Okay.
with a chipotle barbecue sauce, homemade.
That sounds
Little heat.
fantastic. To be honest with you, I'm a lazy cook when I get home. So that's why the way I put it for you is what I tell customers because it's so easy, and a lot of times people want the easiest route. What you're doing is going to make a much better rib. What I do is simple and hard to screw up.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got two packages, so I'll try your way too.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Laura.
Tollefson's not only sells their product at the market, they're cooking it up, so you can eat an Italian sausage while you're shopping. On the subject of meat, I think everyone that eats meat, well, frankly, even people that used to eat meat, they have their perfect steak in their background. With that in mind, let's move on to agenda item number 3, how to grill the perfect steak and the doneness guide. My steak grilling guide. Okay, so the reason I put this together is because I often get a lot of questions about beef, how to grill the perfect steak, and comments like, I grilled this perfect steak once and I've never been able to do it again. Or, I've never been able to grill a perfect steak and I don't understand why. So that's why I put this together, because I think these are some parameters that will help you tip the scale in your favor. And really, in many ways, that's what cooking is about. Cooking is about tipping the scale in your favor. Cooking is about making sure that you do all the little things that you can to make things work. So let's just look at this. First of all, I want you to know what you're buying. And that kind of is under Know Your Beef and Consider This. So knowing your beef means you need to know what kinds of beef are out there. And what used to be the only thing that you could get was grain-fed beef, which is kind of what you would get in a steakhouse, and that was everywhere. And then along came grass-fed beef. And that changed things quite a bit because it tastes different. It's much leaner. It's harder to cook because it doesn't have the fat, and it has a gamier taste to it. So some people would just not like that. So that's fine. What producers started doing, and you're going to hear a lot about what producers can do to manipulate the outcome of the meat that you buy, and it's very sophisticated. So I'm not going to talk much about it because they're going to talk about it. But and it's not beef, it's pork, but it's the same thing with beef and everything, chicken, everything. So what they do now is they'll grass feed beef and then finish off their feeding with grain, and that's to add fat into it. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You have that cow that's been allowed to eat in the field, and whatever they decide to let it eat, whether it's alfalfa or whatever it is, and that affects the flavor of the meat, and then they finish it off with grain to add fat back into that mixture. So that gets my vote. So then under consider this, thickness is really, really important. There's a reason that when you go to a steakhouse, you get a steak that's 1.5 to 2 inches thick, and that's because it grills better. You can have the outside seared and, you know, have that nice crustiness to the outside of it, and the inside can still be as rare as you want it to be. So that's the reason steaks are thick. It's much harder to get that kind of an outcome, especially on a grill, from a thinner steak. So consider that when you're buying your steaks. Sometimes it's just good to put some money into it. I mean, for me, we don't grill steaks very often, but when we do, we buy the best that we can get. And then I wanted to talk about dry age, which is absolutely a game changer. And if you can put the money into it, it's going to be probably 25% more than a steak that is not dry aged. But what dry aging is it's basically put on a rack in a controlled environment, a chilled, controlled environment for about a month. And during that month, it forms a bit of a crust on it, and it develops a kind of funkiness to it because it's sitting in this environment, which means it's to some degree decomposing, and that's where that it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. It develops umami, one of those terms that is really hard to define, but that's what I call funkiness. It's, you know, umami is like a term like heaven. I know it's there, I know what it is, but I can't actually define it. But anyway, it develops that kind of a thing, and it also loses 20%, or roughly around 20% of its water. So it intensifies the flavor in that process. It is worth the money. So dry aged beef, definitely. Then the last thing is that never take your steaks, those beautiful steaks that you just put that money into, don't take them right out of the refrigerator and throw them on the grill. They need to warm up. Because if you think about it, if your steak is really cold, what it's going to do is it's going to stay cold, because you're not going to have it on the grill for long enough to warm it up. It's going to stay cold on the inside, so it's not going to cook properly. It'll be charred on the outside, and to get it up to temp, it'll still be raw. It'll be too charred on the outside, and it'll still be raw on the inside. So warm it up. I would say for at least an hour. And that brings me to my next point. You need to season in layers. So while that steak is warming up, you want to sprinkle it with kosher salt on both sides. Put it on a rack so it's exposed to the air. That's going to draw some of the moisture out of it. What that is going to do is that's going to give you a nice crust to your steak. And it's going to give you that first layer of seasoning. And you always want to season in layers. You don't want to just dump salt on things. You want to add a little here and then add a little there. And then you can finish it off with more like a Malden sea salt or another type of sea salt to add a little crunch into the mix right before you serve it. Pepper. Crack your pepper. I can't stress this enough. I'm not even talking grinding. I'm talking getting out your mortar and pestle. Take your peppercorns in right before you put those peppercorns on your steak. Crack them and then put them on the steak. It'll add crunch. The flavor will be much more intense, and it's just the right thing to do. Okay, as far as your fire, if you're doing charcoal, there's a rule called the 2x2 rule. Have you heard of this, Mark? So it's basically, if you can, and what you want to do is build your fire and then you start to let it die down. And then if you can hold your hand 2 inches above the fire or the charcoal for 2 seconds, not 2 minutes, 2 seconds, then you know your fire is ready. If you can't hold it for 2 seconds, it's too hot. If it's 4 seconds, it's already gone. Then you need to add more charcoal and bring the fire up for it to be proper. So and you want a hot side and you want a not so hot side. Again, for me, that would be those divided briquettes, and then I would have not so hot in the center and then my searing hot coals on the side. Then you want to sear on the hot side over those coals for 3 to 4 minutes on each side, and then move it to the center. And I'm talking about these thick steaks, by the way. Your time's going to change if you're doing a thinner steak. But put it in the center, cover it 3 to 8 minutes, and you are golden. If you're going to temp your steak, and you know, after a period of time, if you do a whole lot of this type of grilling, you'll be able to tell. You can smell when a steak is at the temperature that you want it to do. It actually smells differently. It will feel differently if you poke it with your finger. But to temp it, just go in from the side for a thick steak and temp it into the center, and then you'll know what temperature you want it at. For me, I usually stop at 130, knowing that when I pull it off of the grill and let it rest, it's going to come up another 5 degrees and end up at 135, which for me is perfect. Okay.
Like the temp guys?
Yes, so now we're ready for that temping guide. Here we go. Okay, so I did this because there's a lot of information put out by the USDA, which I moved over. Put out by the USDA, which is very valid information. It's primarily based on restaurants and feeding a lot of people, and certainly based on the fact that there are certain populations that should not eat food that is cooked to lower temperatures, and that's people, sometimes elderly people, children, that type of thing. So they put those out there. It also is, the temperatures kill bacteria and pathogens, and for a vendor, if you cook the pathogens out, the vendor is safe as well from any potential problems that could happen. But the reality of it is that most chefs cook to lower temperatures because the food tastes better and you don't want to overcook things. So it's important to buy from people that you trust and take care with the processing of their food, and then you don't have to worry about this stuff. So I did put the chef's commonly used temperatures and their ranges in there because things vary and people like different things, but ranges of what chefs typically do, and these are also ranges that I typically do. On the right, there's a sous vide column. If I'm doing sous vide, and you'll see that coming up here, like for pork chops or chicken or whatever I'm doing it for, I always go 10 to 15 degrees lower than the ultimate temperature I want, because when I put it on the grill, I'm going to raise the temperature as I finish off the cooking. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out, ground meats are kind of in a category of their own, because the USDA recommends, and most vendors put this on their packaging if they're selling raw anything, 165 or above, that will kill any pathogen. So that's the reason that is there. My recommendation again is buy from a single source. If you're doing ground beef and you have access to a butcher, have him grind sirloin for you for your ground beef. It's important to know where it's from. So if you want a rare burger, you know that you're not getting beef from all over the United States. You're getting it from a single source, and it's a vetted source, and you know that you can cook it to a lower temperature and you'll be fine, okay? Anyone that has experienced my cooking, maybe especially my catering, knows that I put vegetables in the forefront of every menu that I write. I tend to look at the vegetables as being the centerpiece of the meal, and meat, if there is meat, as an accent piece. Cooking vegetables on the grill is one of my favorite things to do, but it can be a real hassle because of the great difference in cooking times with, say, zucchini versus, say, carrots, or potatoes versus snap peas. So I wrote a guide. It's in your packet that you can get at BonicelliCookingClub.com, and let's take a look at that guide and grill some vegetables. This is agenda item number 4, perfectly grilled vegetables. At the top, you have, after the title, you have the after marinade, which you just basically mix together. I don't blend this. I like the chunkiness, so I chop up the herbs and the garlic, and I like it to have that kind of coarse quality to it. And then I prep the vegetables. Now, the goal of this is, it's really hard to get vegetables to cook properly. They all cook very differently. So if you, even the morning of, when you're entertaining or whatever you're doing, if you prep these vegetables in this way, then you can pull them out and grill them and have a beautiful grilled vegetable platter. So you can run that video while I'm talking. So potatoes and yams and sweet potatoes I microwave for 5 to 6 minutes. Yes, I microwave them. Whole carrots, and that would apply to parsnips too. 4 minutes, and depending on the size of the vegetable, this is going to vary a little bit, but this will get you in the ballpark. Cauliflower and broccoli florets, 2 minutes. They'll still be kind of hard. Beets are just like potatoes if you want to peel them, 5 to 6 minutes. Corn on the cob in the husk, 2 minutes, just to get it going. Eggplant, I salt. I don't put it in a microwave. Salt for 45 minutes, and that's to draw the moisture out. Look at that platter. Oh my gosh. So anyway, what I'm doing is grilling in a single layer, and all of this is 3 to 4 minutes per vegetable, and then I'm salting a little more with my perfect salt, my seasoning, what's the word I'm looking for? Sea salt. And then on goes my marinade. And then I serve the marinade on the side, and people love this marinade. It is so simple, but I promise you this is a show-stopping way to do vegetables. And this should be something that you laminate and keep around for when you're grilling. The grilling guide gives you what you need to do ahead of time to prep your vegetables before they hit the grill. So here's another trick that I always use when I'm entertaining. Grill most items ahead. Maybe you want the theatrics of taking the steak or kebab off the grill in front of your guests. Fine. But for other things like vegetables, grill ahead and reheat the food in your oven right before serving. If you're using an after marinade, which you definitely should, put it on just before you serve or just before you put it in the oven. Reheat at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 minutes or until hot. Then you can have all that wonderful grilled flavor and have a perfectly timed, relaxed meal. Thanks so much for joining me. Thank you to the Minneapolis Farmers Market. If you enjoyed this live stream video, please like it, share it, subscribe to my channel. The button should be right here on the page. And remember, go to BonicelliCookingClub.com for my free amazing recipe and guide packet. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite vendors at the Minneapolis Farmers Market, Russ Willenbring from Produce Acres.
We have has already been snapped off on the bottom, so you don't have to snap it again. And if you're going to steam it for about a minute to a minute and a half. You're going to grill it. There, I don't know how long, simply because I don't know how wild your fire gets. Put a little butter, olive oil on it, throw it right on the grates, turn a little bit. When you think it's almost done, take a little piece and try it. At our house, not very many tips make it in. But other than that, throw it on the grill, enjoy it.
I think I'm going to undercook it, not overcook it. I've had your asparagus for years now, and I can eat it raw. It's
Yes.
so good. So we'll just keep it really simple.
Keep it simple. Keep your eye on it so that it does not get overdone. If you get it overdone, you just lose the flavor.
Right, there's no going back, is there? Tell me a little bit about your farm.
Well, we've started our farm planting asparagus in 1983. We've been harvesting ever since. We also have strawberries, raspberries, sweet corn, cucumbers, pickles, a variety of things. And in 2011, 10 years ago, we went organic. We've been pesticide-free since 1993, and the flavors are just getting